Good morning, students. Am I audible to you? Am I clearly visible and audible? Okay. So today we are going to discuss pancreas. Uh, I will more focus on acute pancreatitis because many questions come from this topic, acute pancreatitis. Although from pancreas there are other topics like pseudopancreatic cyst, chronic pancreatitis, endocrine and exocrine malignancies of pancreas. These are other topics from where you can get questions. But the most important topic is acute pancreatitis. So I'll try to cover acute pancreatitis, and in next session I will cover the exocrine and endocrine pancreas malignancy. Okay. So shall we start? Okay. So let's start with the first MCQ. Very easy question. The purpose of putting this question is just to tell you about all the causes. So tell me, what is the answer? Yes. So remember gate, and this is the sequence. Okay. The most common is gallstone, then it is alcohol, then it is trauma, and then it is ERCP. Okay. Gate. This is the mnemonic for the causes of acute pancreatitis. So these four are major causes. Okay. These four are major causes. There are other minor causes also that you should know. Okay. So what are the other minor causes? See, gallstones can cause 50 to 75% times. This is the reason, gallstone. Then 25% alcohol is the reason. Post ERCP abdominal trauma are also risk. Okay, so these four are major causes. Other causes are surgeries like biliary surgery or upper GI surgery or cardiothoracic surgery, then any periampullary tumor, then drugs, certain drugs like steroids, azathioprine, asparginase, valproic acid, thiazides, estrogen are risk factors. Hyperparathyroidism, hypercalcemia, pancreasdivism, hypertriglyceridemia, autoimmune pancreatitis. So these all are causes of acute pancreatitis. Okay. Now, which is the most common clinical presentation? Abdominal pain. Abdominal pain is the most common presentation of acute pancreatitis. It is acute in onset, severe, and first experience at the epigastrium, and but may be localized upper quadrant or felt diffusely through the abdomen. So this is a feature. This is a presentation or a this is actually a how pain in acute pancreatitis presents with. Okay, it usually starts in the epigastrium. It is severe pain, acute in onset, and it can be localized or it can be throughout the abdomen, diffusely present throughout the abdomen. Okay. Pain is defined as boring through or nipping pain, and it may radiate to back in 50% of the patients. And on leaning forward or bending forward, the pain gets relieved. Okay, or it may be reduced. So this is again a feature of pain in acute pancreatitis. There can be nausea, vomiting, and persistent retching also. Fever is usually present and it is low grade. Weakness, anxiety, sweating, hiccups can also be seen in these patients. Now, on examination, the patient can present with profound shock, toxicity, and confusion. Okay, sometimes it's a state of like, as in peritonitis. How patient present with peritonitis? The patient is in shock. Similarly, patient of acute pancreatitis presents with shock. Okay, it is very difficult to identify or it is very difficult to examine to differentiate on clinical examine a patient of pancreatitis and patient of peritonitis sometimes. Okay. Now, tachypnea, hypotension, tachycardia can also be present. Mild icterus can be seen that if there is any biliary obstruction or edema in the pancreatic head. Okay. So which what is this? What is this sign? Student question. Image based questions are nowadays very common. So if you have seen of such patients in ward, then it will be easy for you to answer. Okay. So all these signs are actually seen in acute pancreatitis, and these are signs of discoloration. Okay. Now let me tell you what is this. So I'll tell you uh, about all the sign, and then we'll come back to this question again. Okay. So what is gray Turner sign? When there is discoloration of flanks, means backside. Okay, that is gray Turner sign. Fox sign, when there is discoloration along inguinal canal. Cullen sign, discoloration around umbilicus. Bryant sign, discoloration of scrotum. Pandya Raja sign, discoloration of right axilla. Waxed sign is livida reticularis. Okay, so now tell me, what is this sign? You can answer in the comment box. Which sign is this? Cullen sign. This discoloration is present around the umbilicus. It is Cullen sign. Okay. Yes. So remember all these signs. You may get such image-based questions. Okay. They can be asked. See, this is gray Turner sign present in the flank. Okay. And this is Cullen sign. And this is Fox sign present near inguinal canal. Okay. Now, abdominal distension can be there, tenderness, rebound tenderness can be there, rigidity guarding, just like in peritonitis, there can be abdominal signs present on examination. Okay, mass in epigastrium usually absent, may be present due to inflammation. Okay, now coming on to the investigation, student, very important. Serum amylase, it it usually in the levels of serum amylase, it rises early and it falls early. Early rise and early fall is seen in serum amylase levels. This is usually because of short half life, only 2 to 4 hours. Again, important, note it down. Half life of serum amylase is 2 to 4 hours. There is early rise and early fall. After an attack of acute pancreatitis, if you will check the level of serum amylase, it will be raised. But after 3 days or 4 days, again you, even if the patient condition is not stabilized, the amylase level will fall. Okay, due to its short half-life. If it is persistently high, then it is suggestive of pseudocyst. That is the most common reason why serum amylase levels is still high. If it is still persistently high, okay, and there is no role in prognosis. No role in prognosis means whether the serum amylase level is 1000 or whether it is 4000, the severity is not the severity or the prognosis is same. Okay, it will not tell you that it does not mean that 4000 level is more severe or it has poor prognosis. No, both are severe. It will not differentiate. There is no role in severity or prognosis. Okay. Then serum lipase level has a longer half life, 6 to 8 hours. It is more specific and sensitive to pancreatitis. Okay. And there is again no role in prognosis. This no role in prognosis is very, very important. That is why these two investigations, serum amylase and serum lipase, these two investigations are not included in any scoring system. There are many scoring systems that I am going to discuss, like Ranson's, Glasgow, Apache 2, okay, Atlanta. So there are many scoring system, and in those scoring system we do not include serum amylase and serum lipase levels. Okay, because there is no role in prognosis. Just serum lipase level is done to check for sensitivity, specificity, and it has a longer half life, so it can be detected later also. Urinary amylase levels can also be detected. Urinary amylase and creatinine ratio is also detected, and if it is more than 5, it is suggestive of pancreatitis. But nowadays, it is not used. Urinary trypsinogen 2 is also used for assessing the severity. Now, other hematological investigation are CBC. You will get low hemoglobin, leukocytosis, or leukopenia. Both you will get low platelet count, and hematocrit may be raised. In LFT, you'll get raised bilirubin, and LFT enzymes can also be raised, and usually it is suggestive of gallstone pancreatitis. In KFT, there will be raised blood urea nitrogen and serum creatinine ratio, and blood sugar level may also be raised. Okay, serum electrolytes will be low, and there will be it is low due to persistent vomiting. There can be hypocalcemia, and the serum protein or albumin is also low. Okay, now chest x-ray, you will get left side pleural effusion. Not in all cases, but many cases you will get left side pleural effusion, and the left side of the dome of the diaphragm may be raised. Okay, now x-ray abdomen on erect, you'll get a sentinel loop sign, or sentinel loop sign is usually seen on the left hypochondrium. You'll get a colon cutoff sign or renal halo sign. So these signs are seen in ab- erect X-ray abdomen in acute pancreatitis. So remember all these signs, okay? Sentinel loop sign, colon cutoff sign, renal halo sign. I have a X-ray. I'll show you. Yeah, this is, see, this is a patient. This is a pancreatitis patient, and this is known as sentinel loop sign. Okay, this is colon cutoff sign. You will not be able to see colon after that. Okay, so this is a sign of pancreatitis. On ultrasound, you'll find gallstone, that is the most common cause. Dilated CBD also you'll get, and other causes can be ruled out uh, for acute abdomen. Okay, on CT scan, it is 90% specific in diagnosing acute pancreatitis. It helps in identifying local and systemic complications also. Now, what are the local and systemic complications? There are many local and systemic complications of pancreatitis. I'll discuss it later. Okay. Initial assessment of prognosis is done by CT severity, and perfusion CT at third day is done to know the area of ischemia, and that predicts pancreatic necrosis. Okay, that is perfusion CT done at on third day. So you can see that this part is edematous, and that is edematous pancreas. Okay, on CT scan. Now the CT severity index, or also known as Balthazar score for pancreatitis, has has got actually two things: inflammation and necrosis. Okay, and that is why CT is very, very sensitive, and it is the investigation of choice for acute pancreatitis. Question. Okay, now Balthazar score. What is Balthazar score? If there is no inflammation, then 0. If there is inflammation within pancreas, then 1 score. If there is inflammation outside pancreas, then 2 score. If there is collection in the pancreas and it is single collection inside, then 3 score, and if there are multiple collection and also present outside pancreas, then it is 4 score. So this is related to inflammation. Now there is necrosis also. If 0% necrosis, then 0 score. If less than 30% necrosis, then 2 score. If 30 to 50% necrosis, then 4 score. And if more than 50% necrosis, then 6 score. Okay. So students, total will be 10. Okay. Maximum score will be 10 and minimum score will be 0. So remember this Balthazar score for pancreatitis. Now MRCP is also required when you are suspecting any biliary or pancreatic duct obstruction, okay, or there is repeated attack of acute pancreatitis and the cause is not known, then we go for MRCP. Endoscopic ultrasound is done in idiopathic pancreatitis in occult biliary diseases to exclude the malignancy. ERCP is done in severe gallstone acute pancreatitis, jaundice due to persistent stone, stenting, and bile duct clearance. For these, we need ERCP. Okay. Now, next question is related to a scoring system, that is Apache 2. What is the correct answer? Such questions are not asked till now, but you may get such questions in your exam. Nowadays, they are asking difficult questions. I'm sure they will not ask what is the value of these, what is the criteria, what should be the age, what should be the heart rate, what should be the respiratory rate. They will not ask you the value, but they can ask you the parameters involved or included in Apache 2. Okay, so there are actually 12 parameters in Apache 2. 12 parameters, and age, heart rate, respiratory rate are included in Apache 2. Weight is not included, that is why it is the answer. Okay, understood? Very few of you have answered it correctly. So let's discuss the scoring system. See, there are specific scoring system like Ranson's, Glasgow, Bicep score, HAP score, and Hong Kong criteria. Now, in these specific, Ranson's, Glasgow, and Bicep is important for exam. Just remember the name HAPS and Hong Kong criteria. Just remember the names. But these three you should know. The parameters, the values, etc. Sab kuch. You should know everything about these three. Okay. Now non-specific scoring system are Apache 2 and SOFA-score. Let's discuss. Now CRP, if it is raised more than 130 after 7 days, means there is severe pancreatitis. So it's actually a single indicator of severity. Then Glasgow score, if more than 3, then it is severe pancreatitis. If Apache 2 score more than 8, then it is severe. And there are total 12 parameters in Apache 2: respiratory rate, heart rate, age. These three were there now. Then temperature, usually rectal temperature, then mean arterial pressure, then PO2 and FiO2 ratio, serum sodium, potassium, and chloride levels, creatinine level, hematocrit, and GCS score. Okay, so these 12 parameters are included in this Apache 2 score. In the options, there weight was given, so weight is not included here. So that was the answer. Okay. Now there is one more score known as Atlanta score. In Atlanta, there are only two parameters: local complication and organ failure. I'll discuss about local complication and systemic complication. soon. Okay. Now, Ranson criteria is more than 3, it is severe pancreatitis. So whether it is Ranson's or whether it is Glasgow, more than 3 is severe pancreatitis. In Ranson's, there are total 11 parameters. So what are these parameters? So it is Ranson's score is actually measured at the time of admission, and at the time of admission there are other the parameters are different, and after 48 hours the parameters are different. So at the time of admission, what are the parameters? Just remember a mnemonic: Atlas. Okay. Now A for age, which is more than 55 years. Okay. T for TLC, which is more than 16,000. L for LDH, which is more than 350. Now this will decrease. This will decrease. A for AST or SGOT, which is more than 250, and S for sugar, which is more than 200. 350, 250, 200. It will decrease. Okay. So it will be easy for you to remember. LDH 350, SGOT 250, sugar 200. Okay. And age is 55 above and TLC is 16,000. So this is Atlas. Okay. Now after 48 hours, fluid loss is more than 6 liter. Hematocrit fall is more than 10%. Serum calcium is less than 8 mg milligram per deciliter. BUN is more than 5. Okay. And PO2 is less than 60, and base deficit is more than 4. Now how you will remember this? You can remember by this mnemonic. This is just a, there's no simple formula. Just you can remember by FSH. FSH is a hormone. FSH and B2P. Okay. F is more than 6. S is serum calcium level. It is 8. And H is hematocrit fall, which is 10. So you can remember by 6, 8, 10. Okay. FSH 6, 8, 10. This is more than 6, this is less than 8, this is more than 10. Okay. Obviously fluid loss will be more than 6 liter. Hematocrit fall will be more than 10%, and serum calcium level will be less than 8. So FSH will be 6, 8, 10. Just remember the values, it will be easy. 6, 8, 10, increasing order. Okay. Now what is B2P? B2P means there are two B's. One B is 5, 4, another B is 5, and P is 6, 60. Okay. So 4, base deficit more than 4, BUN more than 5, and PaO2 less than 60. So 4, 5, and 60. Again, increasing order. Okay. So if you remember this FSH B2P, it will be easy for you. Okay. Clear? Should I move forward? Any confusion? Now, there is modified Ranson score where we use 11 parameters, and at the time of admission the parameters are same. Age more than 75, TLC more than 18,000. Values are actually increased here. Instead of 55 it is 75. 16,000 ki jagah 18,000. Then instead of 350 it is 400. Then SGOT is same 250, and sugar instead of 200 this is 220. So modified it is raised. Now these parameters are almost same, little change is there. Hematocrit fall and serum calcium and PaO2 are same. Okay. Fluid loss is more than 4, BUN is more than 2, and base deficit is more than 5. Okay. Now, what is bicep score? Bicep is the full form is B for blood urea nitrogen, I for impaired mental status, S for SIRS. SIRS is systemic inflammatory response syndrome. There are four parameters in SIRS in itself. Okay, age and pleural effusion, bicep. Okay, blood urea nitrogen is more than 25. Impaired mental status, if it is less than 15 in GCS, then it is given 1 point, 1 point for each. Okay, SIRS, if there is evidence of SIRS, then 1 point is given. Can anyone tell me these four parameters? These four parameters SIRS has four parameters and the mnemonic is four T's. What is 4T of SIRS? Temperature, yes. TLC, yes. Respiratory rate is also correct. T means tachypnea. Okay, in respiratory rate, just for um, just to remember it in an easy way, there are four T's: temperature, TLC, tachypnea, and tachycardia. Okay, now age is more than 60, and pleural effusion, if it is present, then it has got one score. So bicep, if it is if the score is 0 to 2, then obviously the prognosis is good, low mortality. If the score is 3 to 5, then high mortality, almost more above 50%, 15%. Okay, now coming on to the management. In mild cases, sometimes the patient gets relieved itself. It's a self-limiting condition, needs a brief period of hospitalization, and then patient gets relieved. Rehydration is very, very important. Rehydration by IV fluid, then monitoring by non-invasive observation, respiratory rate, temperature, TLC, everything, heart rate, pulse rates, everything is observed. Then brief period of fasting till pain or vomiting settles. So you ask the patient to be NPO until the symptoms subside. Give analgesics, and electrolyte imbalance should be corrected. Okay, so these are conservative management in patient of acute pancreatitis in mild cases. Okay, now in severe cases, what is the treatment? See, again there is a mnemonic for severe pancreatitis, management of severe pancreatitis: pancreas. Okay, P for you give pain relief, you can give analgesics. Then P for proton pump inhibitor, and P for peritoneal lavage, not required in all cases. Okay, then A for antibiotics and A for admission in ICU or HDU. N for nasogastric suction, patient is vomiting, so we can put a nasogastric tube and suction can be done. Nasal oxygen nutritional support can be given. C for calcium gluconate is given. R for rehydration is done. Resuscitation is done when required. E for electrolyte management. ERCP is done when there is a stone in the CBD. Antacid, and S for Swan-Ganz catheter for monitoring. Steroid in case of ARDS. Supportive therapy for organ failure, and somatostatin analog to reduce the secretion. Okay, so these all are used in the management of pancreatitis. Okay, the role of PPI, just to reduce the acid secretion in the stomach. Okay, already patient is vomiting, we give proton pump inhibitors to reduce the secretion in the uh, stomach. Okay, now IV fluid is usually given at a rate of 100 to 150 ml per kg per day. Analgesic is given. Buprenorphine, mepnidine, and morphine is usually not given. Okay, in pancreatitis. Metamizole is given. Antibiotics is given in necrotizing pancreatitis like imipenem, which is the drug of choice. Metrogyl, ofloxacin can also be given. Okay. Now, surgery may, if a patient is having a gallstone pancreatitis, then ERCP is advised within 2 days. Okay. See, if a patient is having stones in the gallbladder and stones in the CBD, so which he should operate first? He should go for cholecystectomy first, or he should go for ERCP first? The treatment is different for CBD stone and gallbladder stone. For CBD stone, we use ERCP, and for gallbladder stone, we do cholecystectomy. So first of all, ERCP is done. Yes, very good. First of all, we do ERCP, and then we ask the patient to come for cholecystectomy. Okay. So here also, if patient is developing pancreatitis due to gallstone, then CBD stone should be suspected, and ERCP is advised within 48 hours. If there is an infected peripancreatic collection, then percutaneous drainage is advised. Okay, if there is a pancreatic abscess, it should be drained. Abscess anywhere in the body should be drained. Okay, then infected necrotic pancreatitis. In this case, we can go for conservative management. If there is no improvement, we can do percutaneous drainage, send the culture, and after culture sensitivity, we can give the antibiotics according to that. And if it is infective, we can also do necrosectomy. All the necrosed pancreatic necrosis or necrosed part should be debribed, should be removed. Now, a complication of acute pancreatitis after recurrent attacks of acute pancreatitis, there may be development of pancreatic pseudocyst. In pancreatic pseudocyst, the treatment is cystogastrostomy, cystogegnostomy, and cystoduodenostomy. Depending upon the location of the pseudocyst, if it is behind the stomach, then we can do cystogastrostomy. If it is near the transverse colon, then we can do uh, if it is below the transverse mesocolon, we can do cystogegnostomy. If it is present on the right side, we can do cystoduodenostomy. Okay, depending upon the location, we can do the surgery. Now, these are the systemic complications. There are cardiovascular complications like shock, arrhythmia, pericardial effusion, and ST. Non-specific changes can be there. Pulmonary complication like ARDS, respiratory failure, atelectasis, pleural effusion, pneumonia. Renal complication like oliguria, azotemia, renal artery vein thrombosis, and hemoconcentration and disseminated coagulation can be there. Now, metabolic complications like hypocalcemia, hyperglycemia, hyperlipidemia. There can be peptic ulcer, erosive gastritis can be seen in pancreatitis. That is why we were giving PPIs. So there can be ileus also. Portal vein or splenic vein thrombosis can be seen. There can be neurological and miscellaneous complications. Okay. So these all are complications of acute pancreatitis. Now there are some local complications. What are these? Peripancreatic fluid collection. Now this collection can get infected or can be sterile. Okay. There can be pancreatic necrosis, which can be infected or sterile. Okay. There can be pancreatic abscess formation, pseudocyst formation, pancreatic ascites, or pseudoaneurysm. Now, involvement of adjacent organ with hemorrhage, thrombosis, infarction, jaundice, fistula formation, or mechanical obstruction can also be considered as a local complication. Okay. Now, next question is related to pancreatic pseudocyst. What is the correct answer? Simple question. Okay, so most common symptom of pancreatic pseudocyst is abdominal pain. Okay, now a chronic collection of pancreatic fluid surrounded by non-epithelialized wall of granulation and fibrosis is pancreatic pseudocyst. The most common complication of chronic pancreatitis means there is acute pancreatitis, then there is acute on chronic pancreatitis, then chronic pancreatitis, there is recurrent pancreatitis. Due to that, will be development of pseudo pancreatic cyst. It can be located anywhere from mediastinum to scrotum and found mostly in the lesser sac or anterior pararenal space. So, as it is present in the lesser sac mostly, most of the times, so the treatment of choice is cystogastrostomy. Now, cystogastrostomy can be done by open approach, can by lap, or can by endoscopic approach. Okay, so there are three approaches for cystogastrostomy. Traumatic pseudocyst tends to occur anterior to the body of the gland. Chronic pancreatitis pseudocysts are commonly located within the substance of the gland. The incidence is 10 to 20% after acute pancreatitis and 20 to 40% after chronic pancreatitis. And alcohol is the most common cause of pancreatitis related pseudocyst. The most common symptom is abdominal pain. There can be symptoms like early satiety, nausea, vomiting, weight loss, jaundice, low fever. Okay, on examination, you'll find upper abdominal tenderness in majority of patients, and there will be a palpable mass in 25 to 50% of the patients. Okay, now if the pseudocyst gets enlarged, so it can cause compression in surrounding structures. So there will be a mass effect also due to that. Okay, the most common complication of pseudocyst is infection, which is 15%. Then it is pain due to expansion, mass effect or compressive symptom, then hemorrhage, rupture, duodenal obstruction, and abscess formation. Okay. On investigation, there is no definitive lab finding to establish the diagnosis. Serum amylase levels, I have told you when I was discussing, see, although serum amylase has no role in prognosis, but if it is persistently raised, it will suggest pseudopancreatic cyst. An elevated serum amylase level and lipase level is seen in 50% cases of pancreatic pseudocyst. Persistently elevated amylase after resolution of pancreatitis is highly suggestive of, very important point, highly suggestive of pancreatic pseudocyst. CT scan is the investigation of choice. Now, what is the treatment? See, if the patient has a pseudocyst which is less than 5 centimeter in diameter and which is less than 6 weeks age, 6 weeks old pseudocyst, it should be resolved spontaneously. The drainage is required only in those established cysts which is there for more than 6 weeks and which are more than 5 centimeter in size. So for that we require drainage. If infection is suspected, then pseudocysts should be aspirated and not drained by CT scan or ultrasound guided FNSE and content examined for organisms by gram stain and culture. If infection is present, then content resemble pus and external drainage is employed using either surgery or percutaneous technique. Okay, so this is the treatment options we follow in infected cases. Now, how what are the methods of internal drainage? You can do percutaneous catheter-based methods like transgastric puncture and stent placement to create a cystogastrotomy, or you can go for endoscopic method. This was percutaneous. Now, endoscopic method. Endoscopically, you will go through the stomach. You go and you puncture. You can also go through the duodenum, transgastric or transduodenal puncture, and stent placement can be done, or surgical options like cystogastrostomy, Roux-en-Y cystogynostomy, or duodenostomy. Okay, the preferred is internal drainage of cyst by cystogynostomy. Now, now there is a DGO classification for pseudopancreatic cyst. Type 1 says that there is acute post-necrotic pancreatitis. The ducts were normal. There is no duct cyst communication. Duct means pancreatic duct. Okay. And cyst is pseudocyst. So there is no duct, pancreatic duct and pseudocyst communication, and the treatment is percutaneous drainage. Type 2 says that there is acute on chronic pancreatitis. The pancreatic duct was not normal. There is duct cyst communication, or there cannot be duct cyst communication. This is plus minus. The treatment is internal drainage or resection. Type 3 says that there is chronic pancreatitis. There is pancreatic duct stricture. The duct is not normal. There is established duct cyst communication, and the treatment is internal drainage with duct decompression. Okay. Now coming on to the chronic pancreatitis. So what is the correct answer? Not a risk factor for chronic pancreatitis. Yes. So answer is none of the above. Okay. Hyperparathyroidism, hypertriglyceridemia, trauma, pancreas disease are risk factors for chronic pancreatitis. Almost all those risk factors that we have discussed in acute pancreatitis, same risk factors are present for chronic pancreatitis. Okay, so all are risk factors. Actually, there is a classification of risk factors. Can anyone tell me the name of that classification of risk factors for chronic pancreatitis? The name? Just tell me the name. Yes, very good, Shimon. It is Tigaro classification. So, what is Tigaro? What is Tigaro? I'll not go into detail. See, Tigaro classification is given by Whitmore, and T for toxic, I for idiopathic, G for genetic, A for autoimmune, R for recurrent, and O for obstructive. So these are the major causes of a chronic pancreatitis. TIGAR-O system or classification by Whitmore. Repeating it again, just note it down. Toxic, toxic or metabolic, I for idiopathic, G for genetic, A for autoimmune, R for recurrent, and O for obstructive. You can go through it. You can download the PDF and you can go through these. Okay. Now, alcohol is the most common. 70% times it is due to alcohol. Smoking also increases the risk of alcohol-induced chronic pancreatitis. 20% time it is idiopathic, and 10% time it is other causes like hereditary pancreatitis, tropical pancreatitis, autoimmune pancreatitis, hyperparathyroidism, hyperparathyroidism, hypertriglyceridemia, obstruction, trauma, and pancreatic division. Okay, these are all risk factors of chronic pancreatitis. Now, clinical presentation of abdominal pain is the most common outstanding symptom. Okay, 95% of the patient present with abdominal pain, and it is severe, dull, gnawing pain. The site of pain is epigastric, right or left subcostal region, and can be present all over the abdomen. It can radiate to back and left shoulder and relieved on leaning forward or bending forward or in knee chest position. The intensity, frequency, and duration increases with the severity, increase in the severity or when the condition gets worsened. Now there is a triad of chronic pancreatitis. What is this triad? Patient can develop diabetes, then there can be pancreatic calcification and steatorrhea. When this is there, then you should think of chronic pancreatitis. Nausea, vomiting can be there, weight loss and malnutrition can be there, exocrine and endocrine insufficiency. Diabetes will develop due to endocrine insufficiency, and steatorrhea will develop due to exocrine insufficiency. Okay, and due to This patient can have vitamin deficiency also, okay, leading to bleeding, osteoporosis, or and all, osteopenia. Okay, now there are extra pancreatic complications also, like jaundice. Jaundice may be seen in the presence of coexisting alcoholic liver disease or bile duct compression, and a palpable spleen may be rarely found in patient with splenic thrombosis. Okay. Now coming on to the investigation, see all those investigations that we did in acute pancreatitis are important here. What are, apart from that, what is important? Fecal elastase level. This is important. Fecal elastase level, because there is steatorrhea, because there is exocrine deficiency, there's steatorrhea. We do fecal elastase test in chronic pancreatitis, and fecal fat weight. Okay, fecal fat weight is usually done after intake of 100-gram fat for 3 regular days. Okay, and then we if there is more than 7 gram of fat per day, then it is steatorrhea. So these two investigation are important in chronic pancreatitis. Okay, see, this is pancreatic calcification, which usually we get in chronic pancreas. On X-ray, you'll get pancreatic calcification. Okay, in 30 to 40% cases, you can get. Now, coming on to the CT scan. CT scan is considered as the investigation of choice. Most of the time, it will help you in diagnosing. It is 87 to 100% specific. And what you will get on CT? Dilated pancreatic duct, parenchymal atrophy, pancreatic calcification, peripancreatic fluid, focal pancreatic enlargement, biliary duct obstruction, and irregular parenchymal contour. There can be pancreatic duct disruption, pseudocyst formation, portal and splenic vein thrombosis, and splenic artery or pancreatic duodenal artery aneurysm. So these are a complication that you can get in CT scan. Okay. Now on MRI, MRI is more reliable, and MRCP. These two are again important to assessing the. If you are planning for surgery, you have to go for MRI and MRCP both. Okay. Now ERCP is again a very good investigation. It's considered as a gold standard investigation. It is indicated when MRI and CT scan have inconclusive findings, or it is contraindicated. It is both diagnostic as well as therapeutic. Okay. Now there is a Cambridge criteria for chronic pancreatitis, which is on ERCP. Students, such questions can be asked. For chronic pancreatitis, Cambridge criteria is based on which of the following investigation? So it is based on ERCP. First is normal, where there is normal pancreatic duct and normal branches. Then it is equivocal, where there is dilatation or obstruction in less than 3 side branches and there is normal main pancreatic duct. Then mild, there is dilatation or obstruction in more than 3 side branches and there is normal main pancreatic duct. Then moderate, additional stenosis and dilatation of main pancreatic duct is there. And severe, may there is additional obstruction, cyst, stenosis in the main pancreatic duct. Along with that, there is calculi in the duct. Okay. Now, ultrasound, endoscopic ultrasound is also very important to evaluate pancreatic mass and cystic lesions. Okay, there is one more criteria known as Rosemond criteria to diagnose chronic pancreatitis, which is based on endoscopic ultrasonography. No need to go into detail, just remember the name, Cambridge and Rosemond. Okay, it is more sensitive for early pancreatic changes, minimal change disease, and endoscopic ultrasound directed biopsy of mass is can be done to rule out malignancy. Now, what is the management of chronic pancreatitis? Stop alcohol consumption or tobacco smoking. For pain, we have to elevate the obstructive factors. If there is obstruction in the duodenum or bile duct or pancreatic duct, we have to eliminate that. Then analgesia can be given in a stepwise fashion. And for intractable pain, we can consider celiac axis block, CT or ultrasound guided celiac axis block. Nutritional and pharmacological measures can be given. Low fat diet and high protein and carbohydrate diet that can be given because there is exocrine insufficiency. So for that we can give. Then pancreatic enzyme supplementation can be given. Malabsorption of fat soluble vitamins can be done. Then micronutrient therapy with methionine, vitamin C, vitamin E, and selenium can be given. Medium chain triglyceride is given in severe fat malabsorption, and gastric secretion should be reduced. So these all are nutritional and pharmacological measures that we follow in treating exocrine insufficiency. Diabetes mellitus should be treated because there is endocrine insufficiency. There will be development of diabetes, which should be treated. Now, there is endoscopic management also. Goal of endoscopic therapy is to improve drainage of pancreatic duct by relieving the ductal obstruction. Okay, and stent placement and sphincterotomy can be done. And stenosis of sphincter has produced obstructive chronic pancreatitis, so you can go for these type of therapies. And if there are stones present, if there are impacted stones, we can also go for ESWL. Okay. Now coming on to the surgery, surgery is usually done when there is pain which is not relieved on conservative management. Pain, intractable pain is there, and complication like biliary or gastrointestinal obstruction and drainage of symptomatic pseudocyst. Okay, so actually surgery, there are two surgeries. One is resection and one is drainage surgery. Now this topic is again a very big topic. I'll uh, take another yes, Pusto procedure. There are many procedure: Beggar's procedure, Frey's procedure, then um, Burns, Frey's procedure, Pusto procedure, Rochelle procedure. Okay, we'll discuss all these procedures in the next class. Okay. Whipple's procedure is also very important. So I'll discuss these procedure in the next class. It's a very big topic. Surgery of chronic pancreatitis will be discussed. Okay. So students, in the next class, I'll try to cover the surgery, and also I'll discuss exocrine and endocrine malignancies of pancreas. Okay. The class is not scheduled yet, but mostly it will be on 2nd or 3rd November. And those who are plus course students or those who are not joined an academy yet, they for them I just want to tell you that I will be taking a rapid revision course which will be from 1st November to 5th November. And in this I will cover the most important topics from general surgery. Okay, the most important topic from general surgery I'll try to cover, and almost I'll try to cover almost all the chapters, those important topic from the all the general surgery. Okay, starting from GIT, then CTVS, plastic, endocrine, hepatobiliary, pancreatic surgery, and then urology. So these chapters will be covered in these 5 days. Okay, almost all the benign conditions, malignant condition will be discussing. Okay, so you can attend it from 1st to 5th November. Okay, the timings are mentioned. You can go and check it. Okay, on an academy app. So see you in the next class, students. Take care. Bye bye.